Hello, my name is Brandon Goins. I am the content strategist for North Carolina Department of Natural Cultural Resources. I'm joined today by Ben Wunderly, the Associate Museum Curator at the North Carolina Maritime Museum at Beaufort, and the co-curator of the Riding the Right Coast Surfing North Carolina NC Surfing exhibit. So I'm going to kind of let him go ahead and talk about his passion for surfing and the how the exhibit came together and everything you can learn at the exhibit. So take it away.
Okay, sure. My name is Ben Wunderly, and I work for the North Carolina Maritime Museum in Beaufort, as Brandon mentioned. I've been working for the state of North Carolina for about 22 years, but I'm originally from Virginia. I was born and raised outside of Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of Virginia. And at a young age, I was introduced to the Atlantic Ocean in Virginia Beach. So I can remember maybe being 4 or 5 years old and playing in the water there along the ocean front and the boardwalk. But I wasn't introduced to North Carolina coast until I was that was probably 1985. So I think I was like 10 or 12, so 74. I was 11. But we had some friends that lived near us in Virginia, and they invited us down, and I didn't start surfing then, but that would come later, probably in the late 80s, 1987 or so. And we would vacation as a family on the North Carolina coast, mostly in Currituck County, the Currituck County beaches. We would just spend 1 week every summer there. And after getting introduced to surfing from some family friends, I was kind of hooked and just picked it up from there and was bound and determined to find some way to get to the ocean as often as I could to go surfing. So as I got older and got my driver's license, I would head down to Virginia Beach for the day, and if we were bold enough, get up even earlier and make the drive down to Kitty Hawk and Dare County in North Carolina, actually just for a day, and then make it back home before dinner, or usually after dinner. So that's kind of when I got the surfing bug, if you will. And I, throughout school, high school and such, I, told myself that, I'm gonna live at the beach someday. Living an hour and a half from Virginia Beach and 2.5 hours from the Outer Banks was just too much for me. It was too far away. So I had dreams of, becoming a marine biologist or something of that nature, so that I would have to be by the saltwater and ocean. But those didn't really pan out, and I actually ended up going to school in the mountains in Virginia for college. I got even farther away from the ocean at that point, but it didn't stop me from spending summers out in Nag's Head, just working odd jobs, making pizza and stuff like that. But it got me my surfing fix for a few months before I headed back to the mountains. And then once I finished school, I ended up back down in Nag's Head and was working these seasonal positions with the North Carolina State Parks, which at the time this would have been in the mid 90s. At the time, they were under the North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources, which doesn't exist anymore. It's been kind of shuffled around. The state parks are within our own department now, Natural Cultural Resources. So I was working with state parks and was living there at the coast, working at Jockey's Ridge, and was close enough that I could ride my bike to the beach with a surfboard under my arm. I shared a car with my brother at the time, and he had the car for some reason, so I was just kind of left to getting around on my bike at the time, but I was close enough to the beach, so it didn't really matter. I could get over there and get surfing. I was eventually hired full-time down in Onslow County at Hammocks Beach State Park, which the main aspect of that park is a barrier island with, it's not a big barrier island. It's only about 3.5 miles long, but it's nothing but oceanfront beach. So I could be, over at work, and at any moment I could stop what I was doing and go change and put on my trunks and grab a board and go hit the waves. There was probably a lot of times where I would have to radio into the office and say, oh, I'm going on break. And the folks in the office usually knew what that meant, that the surf was good. And I had somewhere to keep my surfboard over there, because Bear Island, which is part of Hammock Beach, is a pretty remote island, and there's really not much there other than, bathhouse and picnic areas and some primitive camping. And it's only accessible by boat. So that was a pretty unique experience. So throughout my career, I've been fortunate to have these positions within North Carolina state government that have been at these locations, whether it was Jockey's Ridge or Hammocks Beach, and then later working at the aquarium at Pine Hill Shores. I was right across the street, right across Highway 58 from beach access, and could go over on my lunch break or before work or after work. So I've been pretty fortunate there. And it's kind of a weird background. I mean, I ended up, and now I'm at the North Carolina Maritime Museum in Beaufort, but it's all those collective experiences that I had working with state parks and learning about the history of our coast, and working at the aquarium and learning about the ecology and the marine life. And it was kind of a good fit. Beaufort is not as close to the beach as I would like. I mean, I can see it when I go up on our overlook. I can look out to the Atlantic Ocean, but you have to drive all the way through Morehead City to get to Atlantic Beach, or have a boat ready to get you over to Cape Lookout National Seashore. But it's close enough for me. And so throughout that time, I've been anytime I go on a trip anywhere in North Carolina, if it's at the coast, I'm taking my surfboard with me. I met my wife while I was working in Hammocks Beach, and she actually attended school at UNC Wilmington, and we were dating at the time, and she would have to go to class and I would be down visiting, and I'd say, well, I'm going to the beach. Have to be going to take a test or something and study and go to a lab or whatever, and I'd be putting my surfboard in the car and heading over to the beach to go surf. But that's kind of just how it's been. I don't travel much outside of North Carolina. Never, don't do any big surf trips or anything like some people do. They go to these places where the waves are a lot better, but I've never really done that. So I guess I've been kind of content with just surfing with what we have here in North Carolina. Those kind of experiences, maybe got me ready for getting this surfing history project together. So all these collective experiences, and like I said, trying to get out and surf wherever I've gone along the East Coast, but here specifically in North Carolina, I think I've surfed in every county along the coast, which doesn't say much. It's not a lot of territory, but I think maybe my goal is to maybe surf on every beach in North Carolina, every barrier island. I've got them all, with the exception of some of those more remote ones, like Lee Island, which I think is in Pender County, and Bird Island down there by the South Carolina border. But all the other ones I think I've pretty much covered. And it's just because of my interest in my passion for the sport, to get out there and do that and experience those different places. So that, in a way, like my career, the jobs that I've had, and the places that I've been able to go to here in North Carolina have just kind of solidified my experiences as a North Carolina surfer. You know, I get out there for my own personal enjoyment. I think in the surfing timeline document that we put together, we tried to cover as much as we could. I mean, obviously there's things that got left out, but you know, we tried to cover the whole thing related to, you know, surfing itself, how, you know, surf shops came about and were part of the coastal economy, to even the surfing competitions. So that's a big aspect of the sport too, is the competition. And what makes a sport sometimes is competing. You know, what's funny is that you know, the co-curator of the exhibit and author of the book, John Hairr, you know, where we work in the education department at the Maritime Museum, and out of the two, I'm the surfer, but it was really his idea. I didn't think I could get paid to research surfing. If I would have known that, I would have done it a long time ago. But you know, he's the one that kind of brought it up, and he said, you know, we got to talking about the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame section that's there in the Museum of History, and you know, he said, yeah, you know, there's really nothing on surfing in there, because I mean, he knew that I like to surf, and we talked about that a lot. And he actually, for a while, he lived in Emerald Isle, and I think he would get out and you know, go body surfing and play in the water when he was younger, and so he, you know, he knew about surfing, and he, you know, I guess he had a respect for the sport, and so he was kind of, you know, bringing that up to me, and we said, yeah, well, yeah, I wonder why not? Why don't they do that, something like that? Why isn't that in there? You know, there's a lot of people that have competed in surfing internationally from North Carolina. There's a lot of people that make surfboards, have made surfboards here in North Carolina that are used throughout the country, and even internationally. So we said, well, yeah, I mean, it's not a big group of people when you look at this, you know, the whole state. I mean, obviously the sport only happens within this one, you know, section of the you know, coastline here, but it's still part of our history. And we said, well, let's start looking into this. And we came across some of that work that Peter Fritzler at UNC Wilmington and historian Skipper Funderburg had done down in the Cape Fear area. And we couldn't really find much else. I mean, there was maybe a little article here and there in Our State magazine over the years, but there wasn't really anything outside of the surfing culture that looked at the sport of surfing in North Carolina and the history of it. And that's when we kind of just had the realization that we should do this. We should put something together. Let's not just focus on one region in North Carolina. Let's cover from the Virginia border to the South Carolina border and see what we can come up with. And so John kind of really started looking at the early stuff as far back as he could find. So that's early 20th century, you know, early 1900s, up to about the 1950s. And then I picked up the second half of that century, the 1950s to, you know, the 2000 and then the early 2000s. Just going through newspaper articles, magazines, you know, anything we could find. And then I also did a lot of like cold call, if you will, you know, calling surf shops up and down the coast, and you know, just telling them what I was working on in the project and how I wanted to talk to them. And I kind of basically did like we're doing today. I sat down over the phone and interviewed them over the phone, and just had questions about their experiences with surfing, how they got into it, where they were from, you know, how they started, you know, surfing, and how they started their their shop or how they got into making surfboards. So that was really fun to hear these guys. A lot of them were really excited to talk to me. They knew that nothing had ever really been done like that before. And these are, besides the folks that maybe owned a surf shop or made surfboards for a living, most of the guys were people that held other jobs. Like we talked about earlier, surfing is just something that we do, but, we have to have a job that's totally unrelated to pay the bills and to make it possible just so that we can go surfing, so that I can have money to go buy a surfboard. So they were excited to kind of tell me their stories, and I had a lot of notes writing down, and then putting it all into a timeline format, and picking out what we could to fit in there, and that's kind of how the book really came to be. I don't know if they'll ever put surfing in the Sports Hall of Fame in Raleigh, but I know that Wilmington has a Sports Hall of Fame, and they have a couple surfers in there. The city of Wilmington has their own Sports Hall of Fame, and it might be something they have in the museum there on Market Street. Some kind of small thing that they got going there, but so maybe one day, but I mean, we'll see. The book is really that we did, Surfing NC, the timeline of the sport of surfing in North Carolina, is really what made the exhibit that we have at the museum in Beaufort come to life. Once we started delving into that and researching the topic, we realized that we had enough material to easily come up with an exhibit on the sport. And knowing that no one else had really done that, with the exception of the folks at the Randall Library at UNC Wilmington, and they focused pretty much on the Cape Fear region. And then there was a small private surf museum, I think it was up in Corolla at one of the surf shops there, but that one I think focused on surfing worldwide. It wasn't specific to North Carolina. Wanted just focusing on North Carolina surfing and how North Carolina surfing was influenced by what was going on in the world, but at the same time, how North Carolina may have had influence in the opposite direction. Surfers and people making surfboards from North Carolina, and how they went out into the surf community internationally and may have influenced things them directly themselves. So the exhibit was pretty easy to do once we had that timeline. So I mean, we have a process at the Maritime Museum where we work directly with our exhibit department. We have staff there that are involved in design, the space that's allowed, what we can work with. But really, we have to outline exactly what it is we want to do, what we want to talk about, what we want to teach, museum guests about. So we have to really have that outline to be very specific. We're writing the text, first and foremost, that fits that outline. What are we going to say in that exhibit, and then we have to work on the artifacts. Just having a bunch of words up there is going to be pretty boring. So we need to work on artifacts, physical objects that people can enjoy looking at, and we have to work on imagery. Typically, that could be photography. It could be artwork. It could be video. And we have two of those components in there. We have lots of photographic examples for the exhibit. We have two video monitors going in the exhibit. I think right now we're running one of those video clips on our website from the actual exhibit. So and it has some of the surfing footage from North Carolina from the 1960s and 70s up into the 1990s. So people can check out our website right now and see something that's running through one of our exhibits. So that all comes together. Obtaining the artifacts is probably one of the trickier ones, because if we don't have it, we have to go out and find it. We know what we want, but we don't necessarily know where it is. If it's not in our collection, then I had to go out and contact people and say, well, hey, we're looking for something like this, an old, surfboard that was made in North Carolina in the 1960s. Where could I find one? Who has one? Or how about an old style of, swimming trunks from the 1920s? We had one of those in the exhibit for a while. We had to call around and see where we could get this stuff. Sometimes it's working with, other museums. We had some stuff on loan from the museum down in Wilmington on Market Street there downtown. We had some stuff on loan from the Randall Library collections at UNC Wilmington. And then we also have some artifacts on loan from private individuals. We have a surfboard on display from a surfboard shaper that is from Buxton, North Carolina. He's been shaping surfboards since the 1960s, and he loaned us some board that he made in the late 70s. So getting all that together is probably one of the more difficult parts of the project. And then it's just a matter of, putting it on, how we're going to put it on display. We have to make sure that, with some of those artifacts that the lighting is set right, because the light can degrade certain materials. So we have to adjust that as necessary. We have to make sure that it's sealed off if we don't want dust or anything to get onto those artifacts, or if we don't want people touching them. We just got to put it behind the glass. There's some things that we have out that people can touch. We made a replica surfboard, what we think a surfboard would have looked like that they were using in the first decade of the 20th century down at Wrightsville Beach. So it's a wooden surfboard that we made ourselves. Actually, myself and the other curator, John Hairr, we actually went across the street in our watercraft center across from the museum, where they usually are making replicas and wooden sailing craft and restoring historic wooden North Carolina boats. But we made a wooden surfboard. And we put that on display. And then we have another surfboard that was donated to the exhibit, kind of to compare to that old wooden one. And it's a modern fiberglass surfboard, and people can put their hands on those and kind of compare and see the difference there. So yeah, that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of the process and everything that is involved with getting something like that together. Artifacts, images, the text. Our exhibit staff is excellent. They can print backdrops out in-house, large photographs. They print the text panels. They get it mounted. We kind of set a deadline for ourselves on that one, and we were working right up to the last minute. But so we set a deadline because we want to promote it and get people excited about it. But then inevitably, there's a lot more work involved, and we end up working up to the last minute. It came out right, and it's been up for quite a while now. I guess since 2016.
While we're kind of going through this quarantining, self-isolation thing, how can people across North Carolina kind of experience your exhibit? Is there any way that they can experience the exhibit or learn about surfing more from you all at the museum?
Yeah, the best way is to access our website, North Carolina Maritime Museums.com, and click on the Beaufort section. From there, you can download the Surfing NC Timeline booklet, and that's where most of the information is.
All right, well that's I think that's about wraps it up. That's
Okay,
awesome. Is
great.
there anything else you want to like kind of add?
No, I think I probably touched on everything. Yeah, we have the timeline book that's available through our website. The exhibits up in the main gallery. As far as I know, that is going to we be there for the for at least the coming year or two. Our exhibit staff has plans to renovate certain parts of the museum um, every so often, just to kind of have something different and draw people back. But the surfing one's been there longer than I thought it was going to be there. At first, they told me maybe a couple of years, but now it's been going on 4 years. So I think it'll stay there for a while longer. And then if it does change, it may just change into more like a North Carolina, like water sports exhibit encompassing, kayaking and water skiing and kiteboarding, and also include the surfing.